right, welcome back to the Super-centex Podcast as DJ stuffs another bite into her mouth. DJ is here with us. She's getting her nutrition on. Chad, as always.
We need to do this all together so that DJ can make egg and ham sandwiches for everybody.
There you go. That's a good idea. So Chad's got his coffee, it looks like. Guys, we saw several state-ranked teams lose this past weekend in the likes of China Spring, Crawford, and Bremond. But, of course, they weren't exactly playing nobodies. Do you think that these teams will still have the stuff to make a deep playoff run, later this year? What do you say?
Well, Crawford is young. I think a lot of the sports at Crawford, softball has been able to withstand this, but a lot of the sports at Crawford tend to cycle. They'll have, a young team and they'll have a really good team and then they'll have a young team again. It's going to happen in 2A, right? You're not just going to have class after class after class. And so I think probably there's a lot of room for growth there. And Crawford being Crawford, you can get to the postseason. And if your team is grown enough, you can really, make that move at the right time. So I think there's potential, but I wouldn't put a big bet on it at this point.
Let me say this about Crawford. I was at Crawford Arena volleyball last night, and a Crawford parent that I know came over and sat down next to me and was talking to me for a little bit. Friend of mine from way back. And we were just talking about this and that, and he's got a kid on the football team, and he said, they're not football. They're not going to be as good this year. And he goes, they'll still win district, but so that's funny that the standard is such at Crawford that, not making the state semifinals could be like a little bit of a quote unquote down year. Yeah.
But there's two sides of that. Because, you have to be at the point at Crawford where you want to break through that regional final, state semifinal, and get back to the state championship and win it. Right. And that's what drives those kind of expectations, is the feeling that one of these days you're going to break through. But DJ, I'm going to get out of the way. I keep talking over you.
No, I think y'all are right. Crawford is pretty young. They lost, a lot of the guys last year that were producing were seniors.
Brett Chambers, Luke Torbert. Yeah. They had some hosses.
They had some really tall, really big country boys out there. And I think they'll make a deep playoff run. Whether they make it past state will remain to be seen. They're young and it's 2A. So, but yeah, and then not to mention that Centerville was just a really good team. Mm-hmm. And I think they've only gotten better from last year when they played Mart to the wire, only lost by a point. And so I think they're coming back a little more dominant this year. And, that's all you can really say. Those little 2A schools, they're going to have some really tough teams that are going to play both sides of the ball. And, and I liked at least that for Crawford is that they didn't stop fighting in the second half. They really came back, and especially their defense, they really came back and they tried to hold Centerville. So I think that's at least a bright side of that game.
How about the other C team with the uniforms that we like so much, China Spring? What do y'all think on that? Chad, you saw that game against Melissa. What was your takeaway of China Spring?
Well, they did the thing wrong that they did right the week before. They gave up turnovers and gave up possessions and got in a hole instead of building a lead like they had against Lorena. And Melissa was too good for them to be able to do that, obviously, and then they hung with them. It was pretty much an even game from, that point forward. Melissa got up 28-0 and then ended up winning by 30 points. So there's some things that China Spring has to get back to a certain level where they were the last 2 years. I think probably offensive line play, just as evidenced by the fact that Kyle Barton isn't turning out yards the way he was last year, even in the Lorena game, not so much. And then I don't know that they really. I mean, they've got some good receivers making plays, but that was one place where they were really like maybe a little bit under the radar, really, really good last year. Was having like big, strong receivers everywhere.
Yeah, Trey Hafford. I mean, that's not a guy that grows on trees. So,
right.
What do you say, DJ, about China Spring? You wrote about them in your Rewind column as well.
Yeah, I mean, talking to BD before the game, he was just talking about they would have had to play perfect football, which is kind of impossible, for anybody to play perfect football. I mean, even as dominant as Melissa was, I'm sure they had little mistakes here or there. Those guys just came back, bigger, more experienced. And China Spring has a lot of young guys. They had 25 first-year varsity players to start off the season. And, like Chad said, the O-line might have some growing to do. I still think, like with Crawford, I still think that it has something to say that, they were still trying to win it even in the fourth quarter. And then
still playing hard to the end.
Still playing hard. And then you've got Cash McCollum that kind of just carried the team during this game. And that's a guy that you only see every once in a while. I just probably in the big picture of the season, they're going to look back at this game as maybe a bit of a turning point, maybe a bit of a boost. And I think that next week is going to say a lot about them and how they respond, because they're playing Mexia, which is a team that they clearly have an advantage over. And if they have the same mistakes in that game that they've had in the past two games, then that's something that they'll really have to reevaluate. But yeah, I mean, we get so used to the standard that these teams set, and then when they do lose, it's just like, where did it go wrong? And it's just like, this is not the China Spring of 2022 that kind of gutted through the season and got, had a lot of those close wins. And it's definitely not the China Spring of 2021 that kind of breezed through the season, right? So I still think they have a chance to get that third title. But, they're going to have to work at it a little bit more in some of those areas that they lost a lot of production in. And
sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned it, 25 first-time varsity players. That's a lot. And as Chad said, I think some of those probably are on the O-line. They had some seniors there last year. So as Coach Beatty and that staff gets that group more experience, as they sort of coalesce, I agree with y'all. I think they should be playing in December and, making another run at Jerryworld. So, yeah, I mean, there's no shame in losing to the number one team in 5A,
Right.
So
it always stings a little to get thumped at home.
But, yes, it does. It does. Fair enough. And obviously, like DJ said, they play Mexia this week. The team they play next week, and hopefully they're not looking ahead to this game, but that would be the Connally Cadets. And Connally just continues to melt the scoreboard. They have scored 112 points in impressive wins over Mexia and La Vega. So Kiefer Sibley is running all over the place. We've learned the quarterback's name. He is Jamarion Vincent, and he's playing well. And, Kobe Black making plays both sides of the ball. He's a good receiver as well as a DB. So here's my question. Can this Connally team make it to Jerryworld? Not familiar territory for Connally.
I think they can. I think where Connally has an advantage that China Spring is missing is that they do have a ton of seniors and a ton of like third, fourth year varsity players.
Sure.
And it's not just, Kiefer Sibley and Kobe Black. They've got a lot of like experienced offensive line players, a lot of experienced defensive players, some wide receivers in there that are, doing just as much and maybe not getting as much attention as some of the other guys, the highly touted recruits. And but what I think is good for Connally about having guys like Sibley and Kobe Black who are kind of taking up this attention is they are going to get attention from D1 coaches all over the place that are going to come to Connally and see how they play and then see how the rest of the team plays, and that'll be kind of a boost for those guys as well. And I think that it's a pretty good team and they're going to make it pretty deep.
Yeah.
The thing you have to consider when you ask if Connally can get there is who they have to go through to get there, right?
Sure.
And one advantage that they have in that respect is that Carthage is over there in region 2, and Connally's in region 3. They got the Cuero Gobblers in their region, so that's something to look out for. One thing about it, and Connally has started off great, and then the other thing, and this is like a belief that I sort of nurtured over the weekend with my favorite team going down in the season opener, and of course people around here can relate as their teams have struggled to start. But really, it's kind of like, in bowling, if you ever get a ham bone in bowling, right, you get 4 strikes in a row, you've turned your whole game around. And college football is kind of like that, you get 10 frames plus a couple of bonus frames, right? So if you can ever, and I said college football, but high school football too, you get 10 frames. If you can ever just put together 4 frames in a row, you've shifted, you've improved your position greatly, right? So Connally has kind of started there. Who knows what happens against China Spring next week? But then they've got that ability to gain momentum through the rest of the year, playing good teams, but teams they can handle. Yeah,
no doubt. I think clearly they're the district favorite in their district, and Chad, you make a good point about who you have to still go through in the 4A Division II playoffs. There's no slouches out there. I was looking at Texas football's kind of preseason, top 10. And as DJ said, I mean, one thing that Connally has going for them is the experience factor. I mean, because you look at, Texas football lists the team and lists their record from last year. And then they list returning starters, and you go down the list, and Carthage has 6 and 5 back, and Silsby has a lot back. But most of the teams in that top 10, which they had Connally as number 9 coming in, into the season, don't have as many starters coming back as Connally does. They had 9 on offense, 7 on defense. That's good experience, and then some other key guys that had playing time too. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of put it together. I think we'll learn a lot too in that game against China Spring. So because obviously you're going up against a team that knows how to win state, so should be fun. All right, so every season there is an upstart, right? That team that we really didn't expect that much out of, or maybe we just didn't talk about, that kind of puts together a historic season to remember. I mean, you could say last year that breakout team was University. I mean, certainly, maybe we saw it coming a little bit, but I don't know.
Not the way it happened.
Not the way it happened. So now we're 2 weeks into this thing. Can you get a handle on who that team might be this season? Who's your choice?
I mean, I think I've been very vocal about who that team is for me. Can y'all guess?
The Itasca Wampus Cats?
Bingo. See, there's my answer.
They got a tough match this week. They're playing Frost. who I think if for me it was between Frost and Teague, because they both
I
had
like
really good
both
starts.
those. I like both those picks, and I think that Frost team with Philip Gibson, former Connally assistant, he's doing a good job there. Frost. They got some playmakers, and it looks like their defense is playing well. They had a shutout this past week. Yeah, don't sleep on the
Now,
Bears.
With all due respect to the Frost Polar Bears, that's the first time I think in a long time that somebody's uttered this sentence. They have a tough matchup this week. They play Frost.
But that's how far they've come.
And that's
And
not
you
to
can say it
say
the other way around. You said Frost has a tough matchup this week. They play Itasca.
True that.
I feel like it's true on both situations. It's true both ways. I mean, those three teams, Teague, Frost, and Itasca, all had shutouts this last weekend. You know, and I feel like this is the first game that we really saw Itasca show out, because in week 1 they had to play Connally's JV team, which, you know, they've got some good guys over there being at a higher classification, but you know, that's still, you know, their first real varsity game was this past weekend, and it was a blowout.
Yeah, I'll take another 2A team that also had a shutout this past week. Maybe there's a theme going here, but I'm going with the Axtell Longhorns as kind of a sleeper team. I
mean, it's a good pick, right? Give some love to the Axtell Longhorns, but they broke out, you know, mid-season last year.
Okay, I mean that's fair enough, but I mean, would we say would we have predicted Axtell to win 11, 12 games this year? I don't know, probably not. And that's what I'm saying, that they have that kind of potential. Maybe it feels like Craig Horn does some Lou Holtz type, you know, downplaying of his team sometimes, but at the same time, I think he knows that this group has a chance to be pretty special.
Well, that might be true. I know that I talked to Craig Horn, you know, in preseason, and I can't remember if it was preseason or before one of the preview caps, and he put his team in the same sentence as places like Crawford and Toller, right? That teams that are going to be left at the end of the year playing, and I think he believes that, and he has reason to believe that, but still, maybe a little bit quick to put Axtell in the same sentence as Crawford and Toller.
So we had Levi Caraway, a Baylor student, cover Axtell for us last week against Bartlett, and he was telling me they've got some playmakers, like they've got some legit kids, and the coach's son, Colton Horn, I think is his name. He said he's good, the quarterback's good, so. I don't know.
The quarterback, Levi Leathers, went to a national baseball camp. It was, you know, coincided with the first week of the season.
Don't light a match with DJ and get her talking about baseball here. No, that's cool. You know, speaking of, I think, did y'all see the numbers that Hutto quarterback put up, Will Hammond?
Yep.
Holy smokes. He had 715 passing yards in one game. Will Hammond. Yeah, I think
isn't that where we are in football these days, though? I mean, I'm sure at Hutto they're going, great, you know, great. We put up a ton of numbers. We lost 82-80, and that's how we feel.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, fair enough. It was kind of a 6-man game.
Yeah.
And speaking of 6-man, so this is our closing here. So years ago, we used to do something, Chad remembers this. We called it, I want to say, the Centex Power Poll. And we would rank the teams, usually 1 to 5, I believe, regardless of classification. So you know how boxing experts might say, he's the best pound for pound fighter in the world. So my question is, who's the best pound for pound team in Central Texas? This would not mean that if we put Abbott on the same field with China Spring, playing presumably a 6-on-6 game, that we would expect Abbott to win. It just means, you know, respective to their classification, maybe who has the best chance to win state? Who's the team that we think their money?
Well, Abbott is a good answer, but I don't want to mix 6-man and 11-man.
I think that's fair. That's fair.
I'm going to say Abbott is our 6-man school in that category. And, heaven forbid that we make people out in the, I guess it would be the northeast region of our county angry again, because I've done it before. So I'm just going to go ahead and say the Mart Panthers.
That was my choice too.
It's also my pick. It's a safe, solid pick. And I'm not sure we've talked enough, maybe this year yet, about Mart and the motivation that they should carry into the season. They were right there last year, back in Jerryworld, ready to try to win a state championship, and it did not go well. And they've got a lot of pretty good players back from that team, Jonah Ross and Abram Ross and JD Bell and those guys. And I bet they're fired up. So yeah, Mart is Mart. I mean, but I mean, that's a good, solid, safe pick, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Every
DJ.
time I, call Kevin Hoffman, he's always like, oh, well, this could have gone better. Like, our O-line isn't as experienced as last year or something.
But then they win 58-8. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that first game against Crockett, where they didn't play super well in the middle of the game, but they started off really hot and they finished really well. I think those games really say a lot about them. And then obviously playing Marlin this past weekend, which it was Marlin's first game of the season. That was, I wouldn't say it was going to be an easy win for Mart because, Marlin's got playmakers and they've got, the stuff. They're, obviously just trying to get going, being a week behind everybody else. But like you said, Mart is Mart. Drive through Mart.
Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say somebody's going to get to cover that. Somebody's going to get to cover that China Spring Connally game, and I don't know if DJ is going to scoop that one up or not. But that same Friday night is Mart versus Centerville. So
fun. Yeah. Here's what I appreciate about Kevin Hoffman and the Mart Panthers. If you ever go out there and you're doing a story and you're watching a little bit of practice, Mart just does what they do, and they dare you to beat them. They're not going to, I'm not saying they don't ever make adjustments, but they're going to line up and they're going to beat Mart. They're going to be Mart, and they're going to say, this is what we do. This is who we are. We're not necessarily going to try to trick you, but, good luck. Win the line of scrimmage. Try to push us around, see if you can keep up with our fast guys. I mean, that's Mart. That's Mart.
They're the dictators. They're the Central Texas dictators.
I like it. I
do gotta say about Abbott is that if you take a lot of those Abbott kids and put them at a 2A school, they're gonna be good.
Riley Sestala is gonna play wherever he lands. I mean, that kid is a good athlete. Good baseball player. Just I'm with you on that. Abbott's one. I mean, Abbott has a bigger roster than some 2A teams. So there you go. They're bought in out there in Abbott. So yeah. So I like that. We may revisit that at some point. Let's go around the horn here and talk about where you're going to be this week, Chad.
I'm going to see what the Robinson Rockets have so far this year, and I talked to Rod about this yesterday. I'm gonna do the old photo and coverage gig.
Nice. Trying to do a little twofer. We like it.
Budding sports photographer. I'm gonna be the Ansel Adams of Waco sports photographers that aren't named Rod Adelide.
So you can have a lot of artsy fartsy pictures.
Yeah, I expect all black and white.
Okay. DJ.
I'm gonna be at Connally. They're hosting the Cameron Yeoman.
Yeah.
We'll talk about next week because I might change my pick for whatever game I'm covering.
Okay. All right. I believe it or not, first of all, I'm not going to see Midway this week. Zach Smith has covered the Midway game down at UMHB. I think Vandergrift probably will handle Midway. But I'm going to see a 6-man game. I'm going to go see the private school battle between Live Oak and Vanguard. And I think that's going to be fun to cover a game over by the silos. I'm going to get my bag chair out, just probably sit there in the shadow of the silos and watch a little 6-man.
You should go get some quesadillas from HO in Waco before the game and just sit there in your bag chair and eat quesadillas and cover the football game.
That sounds like a pro move.
Yeah.
I may just have to do that. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all later.